Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm looking at Jaiman, Land of Twilight. This is second edition Rollmaster from Iron Crown. This is written by Terry Kevin Amthor, and it is based in the Shadow World. And the company was nice enough to reach out to me and offer me this book to review. Thank you, Colin. And so I'm telling you that right up front, I get the book for free. I got a PDF. I printed it out because it's 194 pages, and I'm just not going to be able to read comfortably 194 pages here sitting at my desk. It's just not going to happen. Not to mention, being a Rollmaster product, there are landscape charts in here. So those are even harder to read on a computer screen when it's set up for portrait. It's just not going to work. So I printed it out. Take my word for it. The cover looks a lot better when it's in the actual cover. This is a black and white version of it. Now, I'm not deeply steeped in either Rollmaster or the Shadow World. Now, I've played Rollmaster, but it a dog's age ago. But a setting's a setting, and I like to bring the perspective of someone that is looking at a product, how it can be used by other settings and other systems, and somewhat of a progressive take on the book itself. So I'm going to use the table of contents here, which was very thorough, as kind of some notes here to keep myself rolling along in this review. So the world that they're being presented here is very much incredibly soft science fiction with a veneer of fantasy on top. The classic line, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, could be carved in stone as far as this book is concerned. And some of the descriptions and the illustrations in here really make me think of like the original Star Trek, some of the alien stuff you found in that setting. The futuristic parts of PALS, the Time Machine, Logan's Run, those kind of settings, and even some of the stuff from like Land of the Lost, some of the Sleestack alien stuff, ancient intelligent Sleestacks, not the violent ones, really, I think, is the same kind of a vibe that a lot of these images are calling up. And I was really quite pleased to see that, because there is a long tradition in D&D and Pathfinder, many other games, of fusing science fiction and fantasy in what looks like, at least at first blush, a fantasy setting. How many of you out there remember S3? Okay, so that's the basic foundation of what we're looking at here. The book starts out with an intro, guideline, the environment and habitats, gives you a rundown of the climate, the lands, the flora, the fauna, and peoples of Jaiman. I'll be coming back to the peoples of Jaiman later. Those sections are deep enough to give you a very solid feeling for what you're looking at, but not too deep to drag on, which is a nice touch. Then we have the history of Jaiman, 3 tales of Jaiman, the calendar and reckoning, and the timeline. Now, the timeline. I am deeply impressed by the timeline. If Mr. Amthor wrote that by himself, that's quite a feat. It's like 15 pages long. It is the longest, most thorough timeline I have ever read in anything. I think Cyberspace might have had one running through the book, but like in the margins at the bottom, almost like note section. That may have been longer if you added them all up, but I'm not positive. But this was just one long timeline covering 3 eras, like the first age, the second age, the third age. You get the point. Covering the foundations of the world itself, the peoples that originated there, and how things developed from there on. Now, again, I was not deeply steeped in Shadow World, but having read it, and I did read the entire thing, it gave me a feel for the world, even though maybe some of the names and the dates and things didn't click for me. When I was done, I felt I had kind of the texture of the world. So it was successful as a timeline in that manner. And if you are already familiar with Shadow World, it is just going to be much deeper for you. But kudos to Mr. Amthor. It is very well done. Then we have an overview of Jaiman, which covers the individual countries and regions of the continent. I think it's a full continent. I'm not positive. I apologize if I'm wrong in that regard. And there's a lot of stuff to look at in this thing. There's a lot of territory to cover. There's a lot of detail, and I think that you could easily use any of these sections on their own as a foundation for a campaign in any Rollmaster game, or pluck them out of the game and dump them into your setting with a little bit of massaging. Now, one of the nice things about this is that for the bulk of this book, there are like no stats anywhere. Literally nothing. The few times when I encountered them, they would say like, a lock is very hard and say like -30 or something. But you're getting that descriptor. So, if it says medium, that's an average check. So you know what an average check is for looking for a secret door is, or for picking a lock or something like, or disarming a trap. If they say very hard, -30, you know to amp up that difficulty. Now they're using a percentile system, so that's pretty easy to translate into any system in the world. I mean, D&D is just 5% per point on a die 20, so there you go. That plus 30 means it's a plus 6 or -6 to your roll or whatever. But ups the difficulty challenge 6 points. And I just did that now, having already been tired. So if I can do that on the fly in my head, any GM can. So lots of these regions I think could be useful as inspiration for anyone. Not to mention, obviously, if you're going to be using the Jaiman setting and the Shadow World setting in themselves. Then we get into politics and power. You're talking about like the Magician, the Griffin College, the Sulthon, the Shang, which is a really nice name. And you get the different power players and political groups in the world. The Lore Masters are very cool. I like those quite a bit. And all of them play a major role in this setting. Now, one of the overarching themes in this is that you've got the good guys, and then you have the forces of unlife, who apparently want to extinguish all life, which baffles me a bit, but okay, that's your thing. That's your thing. So there are those who serve the gods of life and those that serve the unlife itself. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not serving the unlife that you're necessarily a good dude. You could still go to war with your neighbor because you want his stuff. It just doesn't mean you're not serving the folks that want to extinguish all life on the planet or in the universe. So the folks that aren't serving unlife are pretty much like us. Then we have places of interest, and this is where I think the book really shines, because any of these could be used in any fantasy game, and the maps and the illustrations could easily be used in a science fiction game or a post-apocalyptic game. I know I was reading this and I'm like, oh, I could use that really easy in a post-apocalyptic game as some kind of high-tech, futuristic vibe that was lost after the world ended kind of thing. That would just be perfect. But you have the Nomikos Library, which is essentially the greatest library in the world, kind of like a version of our Library of Alexandria, and it's on an island. Even better, and it's guarded by aesthetic monks, not the brown robe, shave their head monks, but the wushu kind of monks. Really cool stuff here. Great detail, awesome maps. There's one caveat on the maps. I don't think I encountered a single map in here that didn't have at least one missing label. Now, most of the time, it's only one, so it's not hard to figure out when the description says, go to room 8. You look at the map, and there's no 8, so it's the only place not with a number, without a number. That's 8. But there was one tomb in here where they said, talking about a body, and the body had a number, and I couldn't find the number on the chart. And that was kind of important, because the body could be anywhere. From the descriptions, it made me figure out kind of where it should have been, so I could have, winged that. But I think that somebody should have passed those maps, maybe by an editor, one more time. We have the Griffin College, which is a magical research facility, and very good. Not quite Harry Potter, but not far off from Harry Potter. A pretty good sized student body, not as big as the Harry Potter world, but still rife for adventure ideas, either as you're going there as an outsider or you're a resident themselves and you're basing your adventures in the college itself. The Tower of Yarthrak, the Citadel of the Dragon Lord, both of which are very classic kind of bad guy places. The Forge of Arion and the Watchtowers of Lishka. I apologize. I've been reading these. I actually haven't said them out loud before now. Then we get into some short adventures, which can kind of be tacked together if you want to start from one to the other. Um, and you have the Cult of the Moon, which deals with a possessed woman who's by a demon who started a cult. The Curse of Andaris, the Living Prison, which is linked back to the Griffin College. Some other adventure seeds, other resources, and character background ideas. So you can kind of find a way to mesh your characters more thoroughly into the setting itself, which is a nice touch because sometimes character development almost seems like they're skimming across the setting. They're like, here's your setting, and they create characters that don't seem to be set in the world. And any kind of assistance in that regard, I think, is of great help. Then we have the Legacy of the Sea Dragon, which is a small campaign or maybe a large adventure that is about helping an heir to a throne rise to power and potentially save the kingdom, kind of thing. So that's kind of cool. And the characters, if they play their cards right and such, could very well end up becoming important members of that court. So that would be very cool as well. And we have a section of artifacts, and then we have a section on all the NPCs and military organizations, things like that, with all the stats, all the number crunches. It's all in the back, so it's very readily available, but it's not throughout the book. So the book is really showing you the world and the people, and it's describing things, and you're not being bogged down by numbers, which I actually found quite refreshing. And then we get to a bunch of charts in the back and the maps. Many of the maps are shown within the context of the book itself, but the maps are all also at the end in case you want those, individuals. You could print them out and just hand them out to people, or show them things like that, or show them marked up versions so they don't get the whole idea what's going on. So that's also very cool. And there are also illustrations in here, some of which look original, and some look like it might be copyright-free photographs of particularly evocative settings, which is also fine. As long as it gets the feeling across to the reader or the GM, you're a success. Now, one of the things here is that this region of the world at one time was governed by 6 monarchs wearing 6 very massive magical items known as the crowns, the 6 crowns. There were also 6 pendants and 6 swords. Each monarch had a crown, their main advisor had the pendant, and their main champion had the sword. They were supposed to work together to help defend their kingdom. And the downside to the crown was, while it gave the monarch great power to defend their land, literally, like call up storms to keep people from invading, just some really powerful stuff in here. There were each one's not exactly the same. There's a little unique changes here and there. It took something away from them. They became less of themselves and more an extension of the crown, almost a tool, a channel for the crown itself. But in return, they were able to defend hundreds of thousands of people and help ensure their lives would be better and have a better chance of moving towards prosperity and peace. So I really like the crowns. I think they're very cool. The unlife forces, tricks, convinces these monarchs to stop using the crowns. And of course that leads to warfare and chaos, which is what the unlife wants. Now, I got to tell you, 6 monarchs that lose some of their personality, having been raised in the opulence of being nobility, royalty, and they're going to live as royal monarchs for their entire lives. They volunteer for this position. So I'm not seeing why they would want to give up those crowns. If you could tell me, James, here's a crown, you put this on, you'll become less of who you are, but you will be able to enact real progressive changes in the world, in the United States and the world at large. I would be yanking that crown out of your hand and slapping it on my head. My life is an absolute minor cost if it's going to help hundreds of thousands or millions of people, or in our world, hundreds of millions of people. Then these kind of settings tend to be much smaller populations. So those 6 crowns are going to cost those 6 monarchs something, but they're going to help protect millions of people and provide them with safety and prosperity. I think it's a pretty darn small price to pay. I know I'm a bit of a both progressive and a utilitarian, but that's where I'm coming from. So I do question why they'd want to give those up. And there's at one of the adventures, there's actually a opportunity to destroy one of them, and that baffles me even more. Why would you want to destroy something that is that useful to the world at large? So, in its totality, I think this is a solid product. The maps are absolutely wonderful, and anybody in any genre could use these maps. Science fiction, fantasy, espionage. You want to have like some James Bond thing at someone's Scottish castle or something like that, or something in Slovenia? There you go. You need some funky science fiction setting for Thousand Suns or Stars Without Number or Gamma World? Bingo, you're all set. This product is absolutely important and good, and I recommend it. Now, having said that, this is where the progressive stuff comes in a little bit more. There are things I found about this product to be very problematic. The races are the first thing that hit me. They have dark races in this game. And they mean, by dark, they mean evil. Now, these races were created from the ordinary races of the world. They were mutated by someone to create servitor races. But the guy that created the servitor races is gone. And instead of just being freed from that and then going on to pursue their lives on their own, now having full autonomy and agency, they're enlisted by the unlife, and they all just go to serve the bad guys. And they're described and explained and put forth as being evil. There are no evil races. You could maybe say there are evil cultures, but you aren't born evil. And I really don't like the concept that someone never has the chance for redemption, that an entire race is just cast aside because of their origins, which they had nothing to do about. They had no say in it. So that's very problematic in my mind. Especially seeing as one of them is kind of these ape people races, which I apologize, this was probably never Mr. Amthor's point or idea to push this forward. That just made me think of the ugly stereotype that came out of European colonialism in Africa. It was just, I'm reading this and I'm like, wow, this just makes me think of that. And I thought it was kind of ugly. Next, we have a couple of adventures in here. The Cult of the Third Moon and one of the other encounters that you need for the overarching Sea Drake story, either campaign or small or large adventure. Both of them deal with female magic users. One, I mentioned earlier, was a woman who'd become possessed by a demon because she picked up a locket. That's it. Innocent girl, teenage girl, picks up a locket, is essentially obliterated as she is as completely possessed by a demon, and goes on to form a cult that hates men and captures them and sacrifices them to gain power. And she's been doing this for like 150 years because she's a demon now, essentially. But besides capturing men, she also uses magic to seduce them in an effort to have an evil child. And it succeeded once. She has a son who's half man, half beast. And she's raised him, she's a demon, so he's not what you call a nice person. But I'm bored by the concept of an evil child. And if you use magic to seduce someone, that's no different than slipping them a drug. We have a word for that in the world that's not seduction. It's rape. And just because a woman does it, doesn't make it not rape. And herself, this powerful woman that hates men, also brings up really ugly stereotypes that powerful women with authority hate men and are out to destroy them. So that's some really ugly anti-feminist rhetoric right there. It's some ugly stereotypes. And again, I don't think it was intentional, but it's still there. And the other encounter involves a witch who, again, wants to procreate because she's on this island by herself, and she wants to procreate with one of the members of the party. And the child will be a man, will gestate in weeks, and then reach maturity in a year, which would do untold amounts of horrible damage to someone going from infancy to 16 or 18 years old in a year. Talk about crippling someone mentally and emotionally. But to get this, she drugs everyone in the party and then seduces one of them with magic. Remember how I mentioned that earlier? That's rape. Now, if you're going to have these things in your game, call them rape. Don't dance around it. And the book itself even addresses things in the witch encounter. It says, the GM may want to gloss over certain... Yes, the GM may very well want to gloss over certain things, but the fact that you are setting up an adventure that involves the rape of a party member. Yeah, maybe we just shouldn't have this in the adventure. I'm going to do a follow-up video to this, so it will not be connected with it, where I discuss how I think both of these encounters could be redeemed and redone, with a whole lot less rape. So I find all of those things very problematic. And on a minor note, I find the fact that every relationship in this book is heteronormative. It's like every time there's a romantic or a sexual connection, it's always between a man and a woman. And the one time where it's mentioned that a strong bond may be formed between a male NPC and one of the male PCs, it is just described as friendship. It's 2018, folks. Why don't we just kind of cast that aside and let's not impose that on people, because we don't need to. Not straight people exist in the real world and always have, and not straight people exist in every other world, and they always have. So let's just let them be present. We don't have to focus on them. We don't have to make it the sole focus of the adventure. We also shouldn't exclude them completely from a setting, and that's the impression I get from this. They just don't exist, which is unrealistic as all get out. So, I've rambled on for quite a while now. And again, I do recommend this product. I think you will get a lot of use out of it if you're into Rollmaster, and you will get a lot of use out of this even if you're playing any other kind of soft science fiction or fantasy setting. I think there's just a whole lot in here to play with. And I think that it's well done, thoroughly deep, and has a wonderful texture. And again, that timeline is one of the best things I've ever seen. And these maps just knock it out of the park. I don't know if Mr. Anthor did made the maps or he had an associate. I didn't look at those particular notes. But the maps are wonderful. They're very well done. So, that has been my thoughts on Jaiman. Or Jaiman. I don't know if they actually told me how to pronounce it. And again, until this review, I hadn't said it out loud. So I've just been reading it. All right. If anyone out there wants to tell me how you say it, feel free. But I recommend it. And I thank Colin for giving me the opportunity to look at it. And again, I will have a follow-up video to this one, probably posted the same day, where I talk about how I think those two encounters could be rejiggered to be a little more tolerable. Thank you.